The meeting will come order. We're fixing to begin a public hearing of the Cotulla I.S.D. Board of Trustees. Today is August the 24th, 2020. Time is 5:34 p.m. We are at the Frank Newman Middle School at 608 Carrizo Street in Cotulla, Texas. We'll begin with the opening prayer. Ms. Shooters.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, we are thankful to be here tonight. We thank you, Lord, for everything that you've done for us here in our school and continue to do. We ask you, Lord, that you continue to have your protecting hand upon each and every one that is here and those who are working in the school, the teachers, and be with the students where they are in their homes. Father, give us knowledge and wisdom so that we know to do the things that you would like for us to do. Lord, be with each and every one tonight as they leave this place as well, that you keep us all safe from harm and danger. Guide and direct us. Only you can. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We'll determine quorums present. Just notice the public of video conferencing pursuant to Governor Abbott's temporary suspension of open meetings law issued March 16, 2020 to advance the public health goals of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing. This meeting will be conducted via video conferencing, which will be audible to the board and public and allow for a two-way communication. Electronic copy of the agenda may be viewed via Cotulla I.S.D. at website at www.cotullasd.com. Members present at the Newman Library are Ms. Jamie Whitwell, Mr. Robbie Ayala, Mr. Thomas Childers, and myself, Dionisio Ramirez, are present. Virtual are Raquel Yanis. Ms. Yanis, are you there? Okay, Ms. Yanis is absent at this time. Ms. Hoff?
I'm here, Dennis.
Ms. Hoff is here, and Mr. Reese, Scott? Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Next item agenda is citizens' comments. We're going to wait till 6 o'clock and go through those. We'll move on to item 6, the action items. First item agenda is a public hearing for Cotulla I.S.D. 2020 through 2021 budget and 2020 proposed tax rate. Mr. Vela and Mr. Shields will be presenting that.
Mr. President, Dr. Seals, members of the board, we'll be covering a few items today during the hearing. We're going to talk about the proposed funds for funds 199, 240, and 512. We'll also be talking about the notice of public meeting to discuss budget and proposed tax rate. And we'll also cover the resolution on setting the tax rate. And the setting of the tax rate will be done at the special meeting, not at this hearing, but we will cover it, okay? Now, on page 12 of your board packet, and on page 2, if you're looking at the packet that I gave you, okay? There's just different numerations on the packets. Cotulla I.S.D. has to approve 3 budgets for the fiscal year 2020-21. The 199, which is the maintenance and operation budget, the 240, which is a federal fund, but it's the child nutrition program, and the 512 budget, which is the debt service budget, okay? Now, keep in mind that the Fund 240 is a federal fund, so it's really a little kind of awkward, but we have to approve it. The board has to approve it as part of our packet, okay? What you see on page 12 or page 2, whichever one you were looking at, okay? Those are the 3 budgets combined, okay? This will be the overall budgets that you will be approving, okay? You're going to approve only one budget, the whole amounts of 199, 240, and 512, okay? And we'll post this on the website once the board approves it. I want everybody to keep in mind that we're not presenting a balanced budget, okay? And what that means, remember when we discussed it at the previous meeting, that we're gonna be over budget by $2-point-something million, okay? But again, we showed you and we planned for it, and we're gonna be okay with it. But I just wanted to show you, the overall for all three funds will be $60,575,664. That's your revenues, okay? Your expenditures will be $62,646,630, and that's for all three funds, okay? Now, we're gonna go through each one by one. And the first one is gonna be the 199, which is your maintenance and operations budget, okay? And if you look on page 16 on the packet, the board packet, okay? Or on page, let me tell you, or on page 6 of your regular packet. It's kind of coincided, 10 plus, right? But on this one, this is your 199 budget, okay? And what I want to show everybody is that when we went through our board budget hearing, the last couple of meetings, we discussed the fact that we were going to be over budget. Keep in mind that we put money in there for COVID expenses that are not part of the norm. Kind of like we put extra money in there for those expenses for health services, technology, instruction services, even transportation, because we don't know if we're gonna have to double, triple route on some of these routes and so forth that are gonna cost us a little bit more. So, this is the fund that's out of balance, the 199 fund, okay? As you can see, we're looking at 54,459,664 for revenues, okay? And we're looking at 56,530,632 for expenditures, which is roughly $2.070 million over budget, okay? Again, we showed you where we planned this, looked at it, we're still way ahead, or still enough ahead on our projections that we're okay. Also on there, you have the breakdown of the 61, 62. These are just the object codes, payroll, contracted services, and so forth. So just a different breakdown, okay? If you look at the following pages, you'll have the actual printout of what we posted into the computer. And it's gonna be off like 32 cents or whatever, but usually that's because of the rounding, okay? When I do the spreadsheet rounds it up and down. And then the actual numbers, the cents, just a little bit different. But for the most part, it's on the money, except for a couple of cents here and there. If you look at page 11 on the packet, or page 21 in the board packet, these are just graphs, and all these are just the same information that we talked about a minute ago, but it gives you kind of just a visual of where we're spending our money, okay? And same thing on page 22 or page 12. Just a different breakdown, okay? And that one is done by function, so you get to see how much piece of the pie each function is taking, okay? For the most part, for the norm, your function 11, which is your instruction, would be the big number, okay? But in our case, because because of recapture and we're excess fund, we have too much money, according to the state. The recapture in our instance is the largest number, okay? But really for the norm, your function 11 would be your biggest number. If you compare function 11 to all the other functions, besides recapture, it's the largest number, okay? And that's your instruction, okay? And the rest of the pages are just kind of a breakdown of every single line item that we budget for. And again, if you go back to the first page that we looked at page, for Fund 199, page 16 or page 6, if you look at your instruction, it's $10.894 million, but look at your recapture, or your Chapter 41, what we used to call it. That's $34,854,000, and that's the money that we have to give back to the state, okay? So like I said, normally your function 11 is your largest number, but in our case, because of our values, our recapture function 91 is our largest, okay? Now, the next item, or the next fund we're gonna talk about is Fund 240. And that will be on page 79, in the packet that I gave you. And if you can see, the proposed budget for Fund 240 is $1.2 million, $1,214,675, and it's offset by the expenditures and the revenues, okay? And that's pretty much a balanced budget. Page 80 is where I'm at, okay? Add 10 pages, subtract 10 pages from your packet, and it's page 70 on this packet. Okay? If you're looking at the one that I gave you, it's on page 70. If you're looking at the packet we sent online, it's page 80. Okay? Now, I do want to remind everybody, this is a federal fund, okay? The issue that we're going to have this year, 2019-20, and the proposed budget for next year is that we'll probably not be able to cover all our expenditures. And you're going to ask why. And the reason for this mainly is going to be because of the participation, okay? Because we're doing curbside, because we don't have the kids here that would normally just walk over and eat, we're going to lose participation there, okay? Now, the other part is, does it require less people? No, because now you're serving curbside. So now instead of the ladies being in the cafeteria serving, they're going to have to serve, pack it, put it in whatever to keep the temperature, take it out, give it to the kids on the curbside. So the work is probably a little bit more, but the money that's going to come in is going to be less, okay? The other part to that is that normally in this food service program, we have snack bars and we have things that the kids purchase or whatever when they're in school. That's not going to happen, okay? So I just want the board to understand that probably next year, and we're going to keep a close eye on it, but more than likely, we will not get the revenues that's going to cover the expenditures, okay? Now, the good part about it is we have a healthy fund balance, even in child nutrition, that we can absorb some of that cost, okay? The bad news to that for next year is that what we were planning to give for construction and pay for a lot of those bills, we may not be able to cover, okay? So that's going to have to come out of the construction part. Even though we have a large fund balance, I wasn't going to put all of it into construction. I think out of the 200 and some odd thousand, we only budgeted like about 150 to pay for equipment for construction. We still have a little cushion there to work with, okay? But I don't want to guarantee that we're going to be able to cover everything that we said we were going to cover at the beginning, just due to this fact, okay? But right now, you're looking at $1.2 million, and there will be a balanced budget for Fund 240 to begin with, okay? That's the proposed. The next one we're going to talk about is 512, and that's our debt service, okay? Now, what this is this is our bond issue, okay? And all this does is it pays for our bond debt, okay? Now, please understand that whatever we have to cover for the debt, that's what's going to drive this budget. It's not a number that we get to choose. So in other words, if we owe $4.9 million in debt, that's what our budget has to be to cover that cost, okay? The good thing about this is that because it's a bond issue, this was approved by the voters, it's not limited, okay? We don't have any limitations at this point for the tax rate on this. Whatever the tax rate requires to cover our debt, that's what we're allowed to tax our taxpayers, because they approved it when they approved the bond issue, okay? Those are our three budgets that we have. And like I said, each one will have a graph behind the first two pages, and that's to kind of give you a visual, okay? But basically, it's just a reflection of the numbers that we presented. Now, the next item is going to be the notice of public meeting to discuss budget and proposed tax rate. And this is a requirement of the Truth in Taxation, and that'll be on page 98 on your packet, okay? And that's on your packet in the board, what we sent you with the board. It's not on this packet that you have, that I gave you. Jeanette will put it up on the screen, as you can see. We'll talk about a couple of things. We'll just go down and talk about the notice. as you can see in the very beginning, all it is just Cotulla I.S.D. and where we're gonna have our meeting. That has to be posted, so taxpayers wanna know what's going on, where we're meeting and so forth. They have the right to know, and the time and the place, okay? The next item you're gonna have is the maintenance tax, which is 0.97640, okay? Now, the 0.97640 is really limited, okay? So in other words, if you all remember when HB3 came on board last year, they said they were gonna compress the tax rate, okay? Now, we were fortunate enough that we were at a $1.06 tax rate, okay? So when they compressed down, they compressed to a level, and then we were able to add those 6 cents, okay? We could do that. And that's what the 0.97640 is actually the 6 cents over what's allowable because of what the compressed tax rate is plus the 6 cents. We got the 6 cents. If we would have been at $1.04, we would have only gotten the 4 cents. So we were lucky that we got the 6 cents. Now, the other thing to this is next year, there's a possibility we could go for the other 2 cents. They are allowing $1.08, or the 8 cents above, okay? We're not at the 8 cents above because we haven't had a TRE, okay? But that's something that the board can decide later on if they want to go for the extra 2 pennies. The thing about the extra 2 pennies is that it's about another $1 million to the district if we ever get to that point, number one. Plus, because you're maximizing your local funding, you maximize your state funding, okay? And that's just part of the formula. But we'll discuss that at a future date if the board wishes to do so. The 0.09458, 9 cents, is actually what it's gonna take to pay the debt, and that's what we were talking about earlier in Fund 512. That's what it's gonna take to pay that debt, okay? The next part is a comparison of proposed budget with last year's budget, and you're gonna see that the maintenance and operations dropped by 16.84%. And it seems kind of odd because we're gonna go into a deficit budget for next year, but keep in mind that because the values dropped, the recapture dropped, okay? And if you look at the page on 199, you'll notice that the recapture dropped big time. And that's what causes the decrease. Even though it looks kind of weird, that's what caused the big decrease, okay? Your debt service went up by 0.20%, okay? And that did go up because the actual debt went up just a little bit, okay? And then the total expenditures you see. The next item is the total appraised value and total taxable value. And these numbers come from the appraisal district report, okay? So if you look at it and just look at the numbers, some of the things change, but really it's not anything that we can do to it. It's just what the appraisal district reports to you. And it's just telling you what the total taxable value of all property is. If you look at last year, we're at 6.7 billion. This year, we're at 5.6 billion. So the values did drop. And when the values drop, what happens to your debt service? If it pretty much stays the same, then the cost is going to go up because you got to meet that debt payment, okay? The next part is your bond indebtedness. And right now, we're at, starting with the year 2020-21, you're looking at $27.9 million, okay? And that's only debt, that's only principal, that's not the interest, okay? So currently, we have a few bonds outstanding. And let me go over them real quick. You have the Series 2010 bond issue. This one will end in 2023. We still owe $660,000 in principal. The next one is the 2011 series, and we owe $4.395 million. That will end in 2026. The next one and the last one we only have 3, is the 2017 series, and that will end in the year 2027. And we owe $20,180,000 on that one, okay? So we only have 3 bond issues, and if you could recall, when we structured that last bond issue, we tried to make it to where we would only pay interest the first couple of years, so taxpayers wouldn't get hit with a big rate at the same time. And then we structured it to where after so many years, we start paying on the principal because we already paid off some of the other bonds, okay? And we brought that to y'all and y'all approved it, so good work on everybody. The next one, on the next page is the comparison of proposed rates with last year's rates. Now, I do want to point out that the rate to maintain is a little bit off. Normal people, when they see this, wouldn't notice it, but it's a little bit off because of HB3. Remember that HB3 went from using last year's numbers to now using current year's tax numbers and so forth. So it's a little bit off. Nothing you can do about it because that's the way the formula is formulated, but I did want to note that because they did in the summary of finances, they put a little big note in red that you're not really comparing apples to apples the way you used to be, but because of HB3, you're kind of doing a little bit of orange to apples type of comparison. But this is the formula, and this is what it gave you. So anyway, the proposed rate in the comparison is 0.9764 for the M&O and 0.09458 for the INS. Okay? Now the comparison of proposed levy with last year's levy on average residents. And this just takes last year's numbers, plugs them in, and then this year's numbers, and gives you an increase or a decrease in taxes. But keep in mind, this is based on the average, okay? It's not every single taxpayer is gonna get an increase of $1.90, or it could be more, it could be less, depending on what your values were last year and what they were this year. If you made improvements or anything like that to your home, and your value went up, then guess what? It's gonna be more than this, okay? But right now, the way it works is it takes the average every single year and kind of compares the increase and decrease, okay? So this year, we're gonna have an increase of $1.90 per year, okay? And that's on the average, okay? Now, the next item is the notice of voter approval rate. And basically, because we're pretty much limited to our 0.9764 tax rate that for the compression, and then the mandated amount or whatever's required for the debt service, you came out with 1.07098 total tax rate. And you'll see that later on in the resolution, okay? Now, your fund balances. Now, this is a little bit more than what I project usually when I show you all the revenues. Remember when I show you the revenues expenditure report? Remember I do that forecast where we go way out? Those numbers are a little bit more conservative than this, okay? This is actually using numbers that we project through our budget and so forth of what we actually have. The numbers I project in my spreadsheet are more conservative than this, okay? So right now, our maintenance and operations fund balance at the end of the year is estimated to be $33.833 million, and the INS is $2.240 million, okay? Again, the M&O is a little bit larger than my spreadsheet because I try to stay more conservative. That is all for the notice of public meeting to discuss budget and proposed tax rate. Does anybody have any questions? Do you have any questions on the budget part?
No, I just, we have a couple of minutes till, we have to start our other meeting, Mr. Vela, but, could, one of the things that we do here in Catula, that, I don't know if we do it, I don't know why we did it originally, but, as far as, given taxpayers a break, on paying taxes as they pay early, can you explain, is that something, that's just local, if we ever get in a bind, is that something that we might be able to think about, not doing anymore? And, you know, it's pretty good dollar amount, you know, when you take 3% out of.
3%, 2%, 1%.
That's a pretty good chunk of money, and that's not something that, I don't think we need to, need to do it, no, we don't need it, but it's something the board needs to, keep in, back of their head if we ever get in a serious situation.
The thing is that, here's our situation, we're kind of unique, okay? Because we're considered a wealthy district, okay? So what does that mean? That means that the more we collect, guess what? More of that percentage goes back to the state, okay? Yes. So in essence, we're giving our taxpayers a break here, and at the same time, we're not sending it all back to the state. If we get all that money in, the state's gonna take that into consideration and say, well, that's more than what you get to keep. So then there's a large percentage that's gonna go back to the state. And right now, the way we worked our budget and the way y'all have let us, be conservative to a point, we're okay. We're, now, to answer your question, if we have to retract it at any point, yes, we have the right to do so, okay? But at this point, it kind of benefits our taxpayers and it benefits us, really, to give the discount, because, sir?
You bet. Oh, yeah.
Yes, and what happens is, like right now, that part doesn't really help us a lot, because the interest rate you're getting on your money is so low, that even though it doesn't offset the discount that you're giving, okay? But if you apply the discount, okay, I'll take that back. If you apply the savings that you're giving the taxpayer, plus the amount that we're not giving back to the state, it helps it a little bit, but it's still not gonna offset. We still can't invest that money at 3% or 2%. Right now, not even 1%. Even if we go out in the large market, we still can't get that kind of rate. So, we can do it at some point if we ever get into a bind. Maybe if we're not, if it ever gets to the point where we're not a wealthy district anymore, okay? And we don't have to give that money back to the state, then it could benefit the district to do so. But at this point, it's good for discussion, but at this point, it wouldn't help us a whole lot.
And by no means, it's not something we need to do, but I just wanted the board to be aware of it in case down the road, I'm not here no more or something, and times
sir.
started getting hard, it'd be something for y'all to,
Yes, sir.
consider,
And
Anyway.
whoever's here way then,
Oh, yeah.
maybe we'll have a better recommendation. But at this point, it's not something that I think I would recommend at this point. I think we're okay where we're at. Like I said, the key here is gonna be, what's gonna be important, if we can go after those 2 pennies. And that's $1 million a year. And you start adding that $1 million into the spreadsheet that I gave y'all, before, it really pushes it way out there and really helps a lot, okay? So anyway, that's, food for thought. The next item I want to talk about a little bit is the resolution to set the tax rate. And all this is a resolution that the board will approve at the special meeting, which is the next meeting after this one. And all it says is that per $100 valuation, we're gonna tax our tax people, or our tax entities and our personnel, 0.09458 for INS and 0.97640 for the M&O. And basically, that's just what I had presented to you all before, the 2 tax rate that we have to approve. Now, keep in mind that the 240, which is a federal fund, is not included in this tax rate, okay? The 240 is a fund all by itself, and it's a real unique fund, that it's the only federal fund that's allowed to create, I gotta watch what I'm saying, not revenue, but enough money to offset its expenditures, okay? It is revenue, but it's not revenue to keep, it's revenue to offset the expenditures. And that's the only federal fund at this point that's allowed to do that, okay? But that federal fund, 240, is not part of this tax rate, okay? This tax rate only applies to the M&O and the INS.
I have a question. It's me, Raquel. I finally.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. See, when they can even make taquitos, they can sell whatever they have to offset the cost. And usually, they're allowed to do that to keep the program floating, okay? If you all recall, I think before I got here, the child nutrition program was in the red. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of districts work in the red in the child nutrition program. But Dr. Seals and I worked, and Marcy worked, and we all go through I actually go through each menu and say, how much does each item cost? And we cost it out, the plates, the forks, the milk, everything. We cost it out per plate and say, okay, it's costing us so much, including labor, we're getting this much in, or we offsetting the cost, okay? And like I said, the only difference this year is that we don't have the participation. and the work is not less. In fact, the work is probably more. Okay, so it can't be like, oh, well, we're gonna let go of some people because there's not enough work. There's actually more work to try to get it done, okay? So that's kind of the difference on that one. But, again, just want to make sure everybody understands, the 240 fund, Child Nutrition Fund, is not part of this tax rate.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, I just have a question on the food. I'm sorry, I got here, I'm sorry I'm late. Will the kids get the free lunch this school year?
No, ma'am.
Or are they gonna have to pay?
No, ma'am. The children will get the free lunch up until August 30th, okay? Because up until August 30th, we're running under the summer food service program, okay? Which means that any child, doesn't have to be a school child, any child can come in and pick up a plate and go and take it home and eat it, okay? Once September 1 hits, we go back into the NSLP, which is National School Lunch Program. At that point, when the children come to pick up the food on curbside, we have to take the name and so forth. Then it goes back to free, reduced, and full paid lunch, okay? Yes? Any other questions?
I could barely hear you a little bit, but I'm a little confused.
Okay. The summer food program allows us to run till August 30th, okay? And because the summer food program allows any child between the ages of born to the age of 18 to eat for free, we stayed with that program, okay? So up until August 30th, any kid that shows up, any child that shows up, regardless of whether he's from Cotulla I.S.D. or Dilley or Pearsall, wherever, if they show up, then they're allowed to get a free meal because it's under the summer food service program, okay? Once September 1 hits, then we go into the National School Lunch Program, and that goes back to the normal of free, reduced, and full pay students. So if a child is classified as a free student, then they'll get their meal free. If they're reduced and they pay the reduced price of the full pay, then we document they have to have full pay, okay?
They
Now-
had to complete that form for the CACFP, right?
Yes,
The
yes.
parents?
Now,
Okay.
the other part to that is, and we've discussed it or we've mentioned it a couple of times, there is a Provision 2 program, okay? And what that means is all your children get to eat free. But we would go through we would have to apply for it. We'd have to, the hard part, and a lot of people don't understand, is the hard part with Provision 2 is not so much that you get to give the children the free meal. The problem is that you don't get extra money. So in other words, if you're free, you're reduced, and you're full pay, okay? When you go into Provision 2, I have one of each, okay? That's how the state's gonna reimburse us for every 3 children, regardless. So if I have one free, one reduced, and one full pay, I get so much money for each, okay? If 3 of the children eat, okay, every 3 children that eat, that's how we're gonna get reimbursed. You don't get extra money, so you have to make it up somehow. It just takes some work, but I mean, I've done it before in other districts. It can be done, but we have to be directed if that's where you want to see.
One more question,
Sure,
sorry.
that's okay.
I remember we used to have free breakfast. Is that included there too, or no?
That's universal breakfast. We still have that.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's just the lunch right now. The breakfast is universal breakfast.
Mr. Vela, so that universal breakfast, is that from now, is that until August 30th, or is that going to be after September 1?
That continues. We've had that
Okay.
for the last couple of years.
Thank you.
It's TDA allows it, and we have it in our district. I don't want to be wrong, but I'll check with Marcy tomorrow just to verify what I'm saying, because I don't want to mislead the board and say I'm doing something wrong. But if I'm correct, the universal breakfast it came into play about 2 or 3 years ago, and what it does is allow the kids to eat their breakfast free, but under the lunch program, we're still under the free, reduced, and full pay. Okay?
Any more questions for Mr. Vella or Dr. Shields?
I move we adjourn.
Okay. If there's no further questions, got a motion to adjourn by Ms. Childers. I have a second. Second by Mr. Ayala. Any discussion? All in favor, motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, for the record, before we get off, joined us at 5:42 PM. Thanks, Raquel. Hello.